Halo, Combat Evolve. Chapter 1. The year was 2517. 6-year-old John huddled under a metal bed, his knees pulled up to his chest. He could hear the screams and gunshots from the other rooms of the orphanage. The attack had come so suddenly in the night. One moment he was dreaming of playing soldiers with the other kids, and the next he was jolted awake by the sound of shattering glass, and the adoptive mother who cared for them shouting for everyone to hide. John didn't know who the attackers were, but he knew enough to be terrified. He hoped that if he made himself small enough, they wouldn't find him. A botched escape attempt from the orphanage a few years earlier had taught him not to run. He learned that lesson the hard way when the police shock batons came raining down. The door to John's room suddenly slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Heavy boots stomped across the floor, fragments of glass crunching beneath them. John squeezed his eyes shut and clamped his hands over his mouth to keep from screaming. He could sense someone standing over his bed now. There was a click, followed by a beam of light shining down as the intruder activated a flashlight. "Please," John whispered under his breath, shaking with fear. "Just go away." A gloved hand reached down and gripped the bed frame. John screamed as the bed was flipped over and sent crashing into the wall. Towering over him was a menacing figure dressed from head to toe in black body armor. The intruder's face was hidden by a glossy visor. In his hands was an assault rifle John had only seen in vids. The man was a soldier. John looked into the dark mirror of the visor and saw his own terrified face reflected back. Was this how he would die, cowering on the floor? The armored soldier aimed his rifle down at the boy. John clenched his eyes shut and waited for the end. A moment passed. No gunshot came. John hesitantly opened his eyes again. The soldier was still standing over him, perfectly still. John wondered if he was looking at his own face beneath that opaque visor, considering what he saw there. With sudden speed and power, the soldier reached down and snatched John up by the collar of his shirt. The boy dangled helplessly in that iron grip as the soldier turned and carried him from the room. John caught glimpses of bodies lying in the hallway through the doorway. As they passed, people he'd known his whole life cut down. The soldier brought John outside into the cold night air. There were tactical military vehicles parked around the grounds of the orphanage. More armored men stood guard with rifles. John was carried toward one of the vehicles and dumped unceremoniously into the back. He huddled there in the dark interior as the vehicle rumbled to life and began speeding down the road. He didn't know where he was being taken or what would happen to him when he got there. The only thing John knew for sure was that the life he'd known was gone. Over the next several years, John was put through training the likes of which few people could comprehend. Chapter 2. Shipmaster Orna Folsamy stood at the bridge of the Covenant destroyer Infinite Succor, gazing out the viewscreen at the planet below. It was one of many human worlds that had been discovered in this sector, ripe for conquest in the name of the Great Journey. The humans called this fertile garden world harvest. Soon its bounty would nourish the Covenant. The shipmaster turned to his sensors officer, a Sanghaley like himself. "Has the surface been scanned for heretical transmissions?" he inquired. "According to their holy doctrines, any hint of human technological advancement must be ruthlessly expunged." "Scans detect only primitive radio chatter, Excellency," the officer reported. "As expected for this species." Orna nodded, satisfied. "Then begin the invasion, launch all dropships, and prepare the landing forces leave none alive. The bridge crew issued acknowledgments as Orna strode toward the gravity lift that would take him down to the hangar. There he donned his armor, checking his plasma rifle and energy sword to ensure both were fully charged for battle. By the time he boarded his personal dropship, the other vessels were already streaking toward the surface of Harvest. In a rare display of mercy, orbital bombardment was foregone in favor of a ground assault. The humans would be allowed the honor of gazing upon the forms of their noble Sangheili executioners as judgment rained down upon them. As the dropship descended into the atmosphere, Orna could see the idyllic farms and settlements dotting the fertile land below. The humans looked up in confusion at the alien vessels streaking overhead. Their ignorance would not spare them. The dropships touched down on the outskirts of a large population center and disgorged squads of Sangheili warriors supported by Ungoy and Mgalkalo. Orna strode out and signaled the advance, plasma weapons and beam rifles humming with energy. Human males bearing primitive ballistic guns rushed out to oppose them, but their projectiles glanced harmlessly off energy shields. Orna gunned them down with controlled bursts of plasma, moving through the streets as panicked civilians fled. "By the rings," Orna said, gazing around in satisfaction. "What a fine world to add to our covenant." Imagine the temples that would be raised here in reverence to the Forerunners. This planet's resources and strategic value were secondary concerns. Expanding the Holy Covenant and eradicating impure beings, that was the purpose of this mission. The Sangheili continued their systematic purge throughout the day, showing no mercy or quarter. Orna noted that the female humans posed little threat, but they too had to be eliminated before they could spread their vile seed any further. Some attempted to hide their offspring, but such heresy could not be tolerated. By nightfall, Harvest's capital was a smoldering ruin. Tens of thousands lay dead in the streets by Orna's count. The few survivors had retreated into the wilderness. They would be hunted down in due time. Tomorrow the Covenant would move on to cleanse the other wretched human settlements. Soon this world would be reborn into purity. The great journey continued. Chapter 3. The Covenant onslaught hit the small farming village of Gladsheim without warning at dawn. One moment, the colonial militia forces stationed there were sipping kaf and griping about the monotony of guard duty on such a remote frontier world. The next, plasma was streaking down from the sky and reducing the prefab barracks to molten slag. Chaos erupted as aliens began dropping directly into the streets from swooping dropships. They wore armor unlike anything mankind had encountered before and wielded bizarre, glowing energy weapons. The Sangheili commanders cut through the terrified militia forces with swift lethality, energy swords flashing. Grunts and jackals scurried after them, firing plasma pistols and needlers at fleeing civilians. In mere minutes, the peaceful village was transformed into a charnel house. Amid the carnage, a young militia private named Avery Johnson took shelter behind an overturned ground vehicle and snapped off shots from his assault rifle at the advancing aliens. He had no idea what these creatures were or where they came from, but he knew they had to be stopped. "We need air support now," he shouted into his comm unit over the din of screams, gunfire, and explosions. "Starships, anything, Gladsheim is under attack by unknown hostile forces." There was no response, just static. Whatever jamming the aliens were using, it completely blanketed the area. Johnson was cut off from reinforcements. Switching channels, he broadcast on all open militia frequencies instead. "This is Private Johnson. Gladsheim is being invaded by alien forces. Massive casualties. Anyone receiving this, send backup immediately. Again, no response came. But the message had been transmitted. Now Johnson just had to stay alive long enough for help to arrive, if it ever did. He popped up from behind the vehicle and dropped a pair of lumbering aliens that reminded him of rhinos before a searing beam of plasma melted through his cover. All around Johnson, the militia defenders were being butchered by these seemingly unstoppable new foes. He saw Corporal Mayers on her knees, sobbing, as some four-jawed freak sawed into her neck with a glowing crystal blade. Young Private Intho screamed as he was burned down by green fire. "On your feet, Marines," Johnson shouted, opening up with his rifle on full auto. "Die like you got a pair for the Corps." He would sell his life dearly here, bleed these alien interlopers for every inch they gained. Johnson lobbed a frag grenade into a pack of grunting pygmy aliens, then shot one of the elites between its four alien eyes as it charged him. He wasn't about to roll over for these freaks. Chapter 4. Aboard the Pillar of Autumn, orbiting the besieged human world of Harvest, Master Chief John 117 checked the seals on his Mjolnir-powered assault armor one final time before lowering the visor on his helmet. The reeds flickered to life, scrolling data and imagery across the interior of the gold-plated faceplate. "All systems operational," reported the AI companion implanted in the armor's neural interface. She spoke with a smooth feminine voice into Chief's ear. "Ready when you are, Chief." He gave a thumbs up to the technicians monitoring him, then strode off the armor bay's raised platform. The half-ton suit and integrated shield generator moved seamlessly with his every gesture. The Covenant attackers on Harvest had nearly wiped out the local militia forces according to last reports. Now it fell to the secret Spartan Roman II detachment aboard Autumn to execute a high-risk insertion onto the planet's surface and mount a counterattack. Chief headed to the armory, where the rest of his team was already gearing up for the op. It was an all-Spartan assault force, six of the fastest, strongest, and deadliest humans ever produced by the UNSC's clandestine Orion project. They checked each other's weapons and armor in preparation for the drop. "Sleep tight, freaks," shouted Spartan 104 Frederick as he racked the charging handle on his M247H machine gun. "We're about to roll in and kill every last one of you ugly SOBs." The other Spartans whooped and traded barbs as they psyched themselves up for combat. Going up against an unknown alien menace would be the ultimate test of their augmentations and training. Chief remained silent, mentally running through the mission parameters as he inspected his MA5B rifle one last time. This was what he and his siblings had been built for, defending humanity no matter the odds. And the odds today were grim. But failure was not an option. "Spartans," he called out. "On me, we have our mission to stop the Covenant advance and evac any human survivors planetside. We drop in 5. Affirmations echoed back as the team fell into perfect formation behind him. They marched down the corridor toward the Pelican dropship hangar, crewmen stopping to gawk in awe and salute as the towering green-armored Titans passed. Soon they were strapped into the tight confines of the dropship bay, cooling atmosphere streaming in from outside. Through the open door, Chief glimpsed Harvest growing larger as they descended. Billowing smoke from Covenant attacks scarred the planet's surface. It was almost time. Each Spartan powered up the energy shield built into their Mjolnir. Readouts flickered to life on motion trackers. The voice of the dropship pilot echoed through the bay. Beginning approach to LZ Sierra, weapons hot Spartans. Give 'em hell down there. Chief felt the ship accelerate. Here we go. All right, team, this is what we train for. Watch each other's backs, and remember your training. We are green and very, very mean. With a roar of retro thrusters, the Pelican plunged into the atmosphere of harvest, hurtling into the jaws of a waiting Covenant army. The Spartans were ready for war. Chapter 5. Klaxons wailed throughout the hull of the Pillar of Autumn as the massive starship dropped out of slipspace. Captain Keyes gripped the arms of his command chair, bracing himself for impact. On the main view screen, an Earth-sized ring world hung suspended in space before them. It was like nothing Keyes had ever seen before, and the Autumn was on a collision course with it. Evasive maneuvers, Keyes barked. Get us clear of that thing. The helmsman banked the ship hard, struggling to redirect their momentum. The entire bridge crew held their breath, watching helplessly as the view screen filled with the image of the rapidly approaching megastructure. Miraculously, they managed to just barely skirt along the edge of the giant ring. Keyes let out a breath of relief as they cleared it. Only then did he notice the dozens of alien warships swarming around them like angry wasps. Covenant, Keyes growled. Evasive pattern Delta, divert power to the engines, and get our weapons online. Where the hell did they come from? According to their nav charts, there should have been nothing around for light years. Then the Covenant had appeared out of nowhere and ambushed the Autumn just seconds after they emerged from slipspace. Almost like they had been lying in wait. Sir, picking up scattered evacuation pods launching away from the ring, Cortana reported from the ship's AI core. Hundreds of them. Keyes watched in disbelief as escape pods began streaming away from the ring's surface toward them. Many were being cut down by Covenant weapons fire. Who, or what, was down there? First things first, they had to break free from this ambush. Keyes channeled power to the Autumn's engines and opened up with the MIC cannons and Archer missile pods, punching a hole through the swarming Covenant warships. The ring world fell away behind them as the battered human vessel soared back into open space. But the Covenant stayed on them, tenaciously pursuing. Keyes asked Cortana to analyze sensor data on their new friends. She quickly identified an array of alien craft, including Covenant cruisers, carriers, destroyers, boarding craft, and single ships. At least a dozen capital ships and too many smaller ones to count. Grim news. The Pillar of Autumn now found itself alone and outgunned deep in unexplored space. Their only chance was to stay one step ahead and lose their pursuers. Divert all available power to the engines, Keyes ordered. Keep us moving and plot a randomized slipspace jump on my mark. We just need to buy time to spool up the drive. More Covenant plasma scythed across the Autumn's hull as the cruiser tried to disengage. Alarms blared over ruptured decks and burning compartments. Keyes hoped Cortana was keeping their special cargo, the Spartans and their engineer armor, safe from harm. Up ahead, the inky void of slipspace beckoned. Initiate jump now, Keyes commanded. A heartbeat later, the Autumn surged into the higher dimensional rift, leaving the Covenant fleet behind for the moment. But to where, Keyes wondered uneasily. And how long until the enemy caught up with them again? Chapter 6. Wind howled through the perforated hull of the dropship as it rocketed unguided toward the surface of Halo. Emergency klaxons wailed incessantly over the moans of the wounded crammed inside. Master Chief braced himself against the tilting deck, trying to shield the injured from tumbling loose as the damaged ship spun out of control. Through slitted viewports, he glimpsed ragged mountains rushing up to meet them. This was going to be close. Brace for impact. Chief called out over TMCOM to the 24 Marines and crew strapped into seats around him. He magnetized his boots, then wrapped himself around a support strut, tucking his head down behind layers of armor. Seconds later, the dropship slammed into the rocky slopes of Halo at terminal velocity. The deafening screech of rending metal drowned out even the screams. Chief's world became a blur of tumbling chaos. His augmented bones and muscles absorbed impacts that would have pulped a normal human. When the movement finally stopped, Chief found himself lying in a crumpled heap buried under a pile of debris. He uncurled his armored fingers, testing motor functions. Green across the board. "Sound off," he said over TAMCOM. "Anyone still with me?" A couple groggy acknowledgments responded. The Spartan began digging himself free, and was soon clawing his way through the mangled fuselage toward precious sunlight. He bashed aside twisted bulkheads until finally emerging onto Halo's surface, hauling 2 injured but living Marines with him. Chief surveyed the crash site as he caught his breath. Their dropship had carved a fiery swath down the mountainside before coming to rest in a wooded valley. Other evacuation pods had made it down intact and were deploying their passengers. One priority now was to establish a rally point and defensive perimeter. Chief assigned Marines to help the wounded while he scouted their immediate surroundings, alert for signs of Covenant ground forces. When he was confident they had a secure position, he attempted to hail the Autumn or any other human forces on the surface, but got only static. Whatever the Covenant were using to jam communications around Halo, it was extremely effective. For now, they were on their own. With shelter and defenses in place, Chief gathered the Marines. Roughly 80 humans from the Autumn had now clustered at the rally point. Not nearly enough to mount an offensive, but if they kept their heads down, they just might survive until reinforcements arrived. If any were even coming. Chief decided honesty was the best policy. He explained to the ragged band of survivors that they had escaped one deadly battle only to land in the middle of another raging across Halo. The Covenant were here in force, but the ringworld was massive, big enough that pockets of human resistance might be able to hide for some time. "Make no mistake, we have our backs to the wall here," Chief told them plainly. "The Covenant will be combing Halo for us. We need to be ready to move and fight at a moment's notice, but we will hold out and buy time for other forces from the Autumn to regroup. Have faith in each other. We are far from beaten." The Master Chief saw weary but resolute nods all around. These men and women had already endured so much, but they were ready to fight on. As long as even one human breathed, there was hope. Over the next several days, more lone survivors and scattered groups filtered through the rally point. Chief organized patrols to try locating other escape pods that may have landed further afield. Some were recovered intact, others found already emptied by Covenant scavengers. They faced frequent skirmishes with Covenant scout forces prowling the area, but the Chief's leadership and the Marines' determination kept them going strong. This planet may have been the enemy's domain, but humanity would not give it up without a fight. Chapter 7. Master Chief moved stealthily through Halo's lush jungles, picking his way along dim, winding paths covered in alien flora. Somewhere up ahead, A cluster of crumbling structures poked through the canopy according to his suit's motion tracker. His team of Spartan Roman hews advanced slowly toward the area, wary of any Covenant guards that might be lying in wait. So far, John's attempts to learn more about this mysterious ring world had led only to dead ends. There were tantalizing hints of an ancient alien civilization here, but most clues had long since crumbled to dust or lay buried beneath the jungle. If Halo held any secrets, it was reluctant to give them up. As the massive ruins came into view ahead, Cortana's voice crackled over his suit's speakers. "These match Forerunner structures I've analyzed from other worlds. Odds are good we'll find some functioning systems or databanks inside." "Roger that," Chief replied. "Let's see if we can uncover anything useful, team. Switch on your floods." The 5 Spartans thumbed on the powerful lights mounted to their helmets and assault rifles, cutting through the gloom inside the cavernous ruins. Enormous cracked pillars and collapsed walls loomed out of the darkness as they advanced. Millenniums of neglect were evident. They swept carefully through interconnected chambers, finding little but rubble and detritus. Then Cortana chimed in Chief's ear again. "Up ahead, I'm detecting a faint power source." They traced it to a small side chamber, bare except for a glowing holographic panel on one wall. As Chief approached, it flickered to life, scanning him with a vibrant blue beam before returning dormant again. "It's locked down tight, but the system is still partially online," Cortana mused. "Let me work my magic." Chief pulled the AI's data chip from his helmet and inserted it into a small port in the alien console. Her avatar shimmered into existence above the panel, algorithmic feelers already probing into the Forerunner network. Minutes passed. Chief could almost hear gears spinning in the AI's lightning-fast mind. Finally, she spoke again. "Data is badly degraded, but I've pieced together some intriguing fragments. For one, Halo's official designation is Installation 4, suggesting it may be part of a larger array. Records indicate it was constructed over 100,000 years ago as a fortress world to combat an unknown threat." "A fortress against what?" Chief asked. "It's not clear, but the Forerunners were evidently terrified of this adversary, enough to create an entire solar system-sized weapon to counter it. I'm still indexing the data." Cortana continued processing the cryptic alien records throughout the night. In the glow of her hologram, Chief caught glimpses of a long-extinct but immensely advanced civilization. What were the Forerunners protecting against with this ring world weapon? And did it pose any threat to humanity now? By morning, Cortana had extracted everything she could access. "I suggest we keep investigating Forerunner sites," she told Chief. "There are far older ruins in other biomes across Halo that may hold more answers." Chief agreed. This installation still had many secrets left to uncover. And until they understood what Halo truly was, they were flying blind. Chapter 8. Sweat poured down John 117's face inside his helmet as he sprinted across scorched earth. The pounding footsteps of hunters shook the ground behind him in hungry pursuit. Their fuel rod blasts exploded around the Spartan, flash melting the soil into rivers of glass. Up ahead, the small Forerunner structure Cortana had detected lay half-buried amid Halo's desert wastes. It was Chief's only chance for shelter from the relentless hunters. He poured on more speed, finally reaching the alien building's entrance and diving inside. The two lumbering Mgalgalo tried to force their way into the narrow doorway after him, but their massive shields wedged tight. Chief took the opportunity to unload his MA-5B rifle on full auto into the exposed orange legalo worms that made up their unarmored cores. The hunters spasmed under the hail of metal and toppled backwards, reduced to smoking piles of eels. Chief took a moment to catch his breath and let his shields recharge while Cortana scanned their surroundings. The room they found themselves in appeared to be some kind of laboratory or workshop, now covered in a fine layer of dust. Ancient alien devices and holographic consoles lined the walls. "This is a major find, Chief," Cortana exclaimed. "These systems are still mostly intact. Let's see what our friend, the librarian, left behind." A quick update to Cortana's translation algorithms allowed her to access some of the Forerunner glyphs on screen. She sifted through data caches with visible excitement. Amazing. This facility was used to construct and modify Forerunner battle armor. Most of the industrial fabricators are offline, but... Her avatar winked out suddenly as she transferred back to Chief's armor. After a few moments, he felt a tingling spread across his engineer suit. A sublime sensation of strength and invulnerability rippled through his body. His heads-up display came alive with new shield readouts and sensor information. "I managed to scavenge some software and hardware upgrades," Cortana explained. "They should improve your situational awareness and defenses. Let's put them to the test." Chief was amazed by the new capabilities Cortana unlocked from these ancient systems. Over the next several hours, she gradually boosted his suit's power and efficiency to levels beyond anything the UNSC could have achieved alone. The librarian's gifts would add valuable new tools to humanity's fight against the Covenant. When his armor sensors indicated another Covenant patrol approaching, Chief was itching to try out the upgrades. He emerged from the building onto Halo's baked surface and immediately activated the armor's new active camouflage. It bent light flawlessly around him, rendering the Spartan completely invisible even at a run. The Covenant squad didn't know what hit them. Chief targeted them clinically one by one, a lethal ghost moving unseen through their formation. In seconds, the entire patrol lay dead without ever glimpsing their assassin. This technology could change everything, Chief realized. The Covenant's own weapons turned against them, combined with human ingenuity and grit. Halo's ancient secrets were giving them a real fighting chance. Chapter 9. "I've got it, Chief. The Forerunner records here confirm everything." Cortana's excited voice echoed through John's helmet speakers. He stood in the torch-lit library vault, where the AI had finally gained full access to the Halo network. "Go ahead, Cortana," Chief replied. "What's Halo's purpose?" Her enthusiasm was tempered now with unease. "You're not going to like this, but we need to warn everyone immediately. Halo isn't a fortress or a superweapon. It's something much, much worse." Cortana quickly outlined what she had learned. Halo was an enormous containment and research installation created by the Forerunners to analyze and study an ultra-lethal parasitic organism called the Flood. This flood apparently spread with terrifying speed, consuming entire planetary ecosystems and even killing Forerunners. "That's why they built this place, to research the Flood and find ways to stop it," she explained. "But they also planned for the worst-case scenario." Chief felt his blood run cold as Cortana described Halo's true doomsday function. If the Flood ever escaped confinement here or threatened the galaxy, Halo could be activated to wipe out all sentient life within a 25,000 light-year radius, denying the parasite any nourishment. The Covenant don't realize this, Cortana warned gravely. Their blundering around could trigger Halo and cause an apocalypse. We have to get this information back to the Autumn immediately. Affirmative, Chief replied. Send a high-priority burst transmission on all channels. We'll keep moving for the rally point in case it doesn't get through. He sincerely hoped Keyes and his remaining crew were still alive up there. Because if Halo fired, nothing would survive. The galaxy would be utterly sterilized of intelligent life, human, Covenant, and Flood alike. They had to find a way to stop Halo from firing at any cost. As Chief and Cortana exited back out into Halo's sweltering daylight, he tried hailing the scattered groups of human survivors. But the signal was too weak here. There was still too much interference. If the Covenant restored this ring's full operations, communication would become even more difficult. Cortana gave Chief a nav marker where she had calculated the control room overseeing Halo's systems was located. That's our main target now, she said. Get there before the Covenant and shut this whole place down. It was a long shot at best, with Covenant-held territory between them and their goal. But if anyone could find a way to halt Halo's cataclysmic protocols, it was Cortana. And if anyone could carve a path there for her, it was the Master Chief. Humanity's very existence now depended on their success. The two of them against an entire world, the odds seemed insurmountable. But failure here was not an option either of them could accept. Chief checked his weapons and shields, took a settling breath, and broke into a steady, mile-eating run toward Halo's distant control room. He would not slow down for anything until this threat was contained. Chapter 10. John felt blood pumping through his veins as he sprinted at breakneck speed across Halo's surface. Covenant patrols and garrisons were thick on the ground here, but he didn't slow. Speed was his ally. The Spartan moved like a green armored blur, weaving between the alien outposts and gun emplacements before the occupants realized what was happening. Each small firebase he blew past added its alarms and plasma fire to what quickly became a full-blown hornet's nest. But Chief was already gone by the time they brought their weapons to bear, leaving only smoldering ruins in his wake. He leapt crumbling canyons and rocky outcroppings in a single bound, never losing momentum. The Covenant forces were in disarray, but beginning to give chase now with Ghost Recon craft and Banshee flyers. Plasma scorched the earth around John as he ran. He pushed his augmented muscles to the limit, barely keeping ahead of his pursuers. A fuel rod cannon blast impacted directly behind the Spartan and nearly threw him off his feet. But he kept moving, even as his shield bar dipped into the red zone. A Banshee swooped by overhead, needler rounds sparkling as they ricocheted off the Chief's armor. He slid a frag grenade from his bandolier, primed it, and hurled the explosive with sniper accuracy into the passing Banshee's cockpit. It blew apart spectacularly. There was no time to celebrate small victories. Up ahead, the terrain rose into a towering cliff face that marked the border region where the control room lay beyond. Chief Sharkby thundered in his ears louder than the growing din of Covenant forces at his back. He couldn't let them catch him now, with his goal in sight. The Master Chief increased speed again, legs pumping like machinery as he became a thunderbolt blazing toward the sheer rock wall. Searchlights dotted its facade, but they had no time to target the Spartan before he slammed into the cliff face. His steel fingers carved furrows, finding impossible holds just long enough to propel him further up the dizzying vertical surface. The Covenant forces below opened fire in full fury, desperate to drop the climbing demon. Plasma bolts and beam rifle fire pursued John, exploding against the cliff just fractions of seconds behind his ascent. At the top of the wall, he hurled himself over the brink, rolling, and sprang to his feet, his shield generator flickering and dying. But he had made it. The chief paused a moment, gulping icy mountain air. His muscles burned with lactic acid, but he couldn't stop. Not while Cortana needed him. The control room was so close now. Just one more gauntlet to pass through. Inside his helmet, Chief allowed himself a fierce grin. He had no intention of going easy on whatever the Covenant had prepared up ahead. Let them come. He would tear their ranks apart. The Master Chief reloaded his MA-5B, checked his remaining grenades, and resumed his relentless advance toward Halo's nerve center. Enemies were replaced by motion markers on his threat display. Obstacles became things to be defeated through force of will. He moved through the ancient halls and corridors like a vengeful spirit. When elites blocked his path, he did not slow. The Spartan crashed into their line like a thunderclap, scattering their formation in disarray. His depleted shields flared under incoming plasma as he slashed through the aliens, rifle cracking on full auto. An Ultra roared in fury and swung its energy sword, but John was 2 steps ahead. He grabbed the elite's arm, breaking it effortlessly, and used the alien's own blade to cut it down. Through the maze of hallways and antechambers he continued, leaving a trail of bodies behind him. The familiar hallway architecture from Halo's ancient caretakers now predominated. He was getting close. With a final burst of speed, the Master Chief blew open the sealed blast door into the control room and staggered to a stop within, MA-5B raised. Empty. No resistance. It was his for now. Cortana, seal us in, Chief gasped, trying to regain his wind. Let's get you plugged into the system before company arrives. Humanity's hope for stopping Halo now rested here in this room. All his efforts had led to this moment. It was time to end this threat once and for all. Chapter 11. Sweat poured down John's face inside his helmet as he sprinted across scorched earth. The pounding footsteps of hunters shook the ground behind him in hungry pursuit. Their fuel rod blasts exploded around the Spartan, flash melting the soil into rivers of glass. Up ahead, the small Forerunner structure Cortana had detected lay half buried amid Halo's desert wastes. It was Chief's only chance for shelter from the relentless hunters. He poured on more speed, finally reaching the alien building's entrance and diving inside. The 2 lumbering Ngalgalo tried to force their way into the narrow doorway after him, but their massive shields wedged tight. Chief took the opportunity to unload his MA-5B rifle on full auto into the exposed orange Legalo worms that made up their unarmored cores. The hunters spasmed under the hail of metal and toppled backwards, reduced to smoking piles of eels. Chief took a moment to catch his breath and let his shields recharge while Cortana scanned their surroundings. The room they found themselves in appeared to be some kind of laboratory or workshop, now covered in a fine layer of dust. Ancient alien devices and holographic consoles lined the walls. "This is a major find, Chief," Cortana exclaimed. "These systems are still mostly intact. Let's see what our friend, the librarian, left behind." A quick update to Cortana's translation algorithms allowed her to access some of the Forerunner glyphs on screen. She sifted through data caches with visible excitement. Amazing, This facility was used to construct and modify Forerunner battle armor. Most of the industrial fabricators are offline, but... Her avatar winked out suddenly as she transferred back to Chief's armor. After a few moments, he felt a tingling spread across his engineer suit. A sublime sensation of strength and invulnerability rippled through his body. His heads-up display came alive with new shield readouts and sensor information. I managed to scavenge some software and hardware upgrades, Cortana explained. They should improve your situational awareness and defenses. Let's put them to the test. Chief was amazed by the new capabilities Cortana unlocked from these ancient systems. Over the next several hours, she gradually boosted his suit's power and efficiency to levels beyond anything the UNSC could have achieved alone. The librarian's gifts would add valuable new tools to humanity's fight against the Covenant. When his armor sensors indicated another Covenant patrol approaching, Chief was itching to try out the upgrades. He emerged from the building onto Halo's baked surface and immediately activated the armor's new active camouflage. It bent light flawlessly around him, rendering the Spartan completely invisible even at her run. The Covenant squad didn't know what hit them. Chief targeted them clinically one by one, a lethal ghost moving unseen through their formation. In seconds, the entire patrol lay dead without ever glimpsing their assassin. This technology could change everything, Chief realized. The Covenant's own weapons turned against them, combined with human ingenuity and grit. Halo's ancient secrets were giving them a real fighting chance. Chapter 12. Plasma scorched the air as John fought his way toward Halo's control room. The Covenant had mustered overwhelming force to block his path, but the Spartan would not be denied. An Ultra roared as it charged him, igniting its energy sword. Chief ducked the slashing plasma blade and delivered a skull-shattering punch that snapped its head back with a crack. A swarm of grunts mobbed him next, trying to weigh down his shield. He burst from their pylon with a devastating radius sweep, scattering methane tanks and gore. The Master Chief was a whirlwind of destruction, unstoppable in his determination. Even the mighty hunters lumbering into his path only briefly slowed his advance before being blown apart. Just a little further, Chief, Cortana urged over TMCLM. You're almost there. John didn't reply, conserving his breath as he bowled up a ramp toward the control room entrance, where a crimson-armored zealot barred the way. For a moment they only stared each other down, warrior to warrior. Then the battle was joined. Even augmented as he was, the Spartan was taxed to match the alien champion's speed and ferocity. Its energy sword carved sparks from John's armor with each near miss. He backpedaled, opening distance enough to fire his MA-5B. The zealot shrugged off the rounds on its shields and came on, howling for blood. Chief primed a plasma grenade as the zealot lunged for the killing blow. He slapped the explosive down hard onto the alien's chestplate in passing, using the momentum to continue onward while his foe staggered back, clutching the burning grenade. An instant later, the zealot erupted in a burst of scorched gore and molten armor fragments. At last, the final door lay before him. John did not slow. He lowered his shoulder and crashed into the reinforced metal at a dead run. The locking mechanism crumpled under the Spartan's insane momentum. He stumbled into the control room beyond. Chief, look out, Cortana warned. He slid to one knee and whipped his assault rifle up just in time to drill a grunt scurrying for cover between its tiny eyes. green blood spattered the wall behind it as it dropped limply. Chief scanned the space, alert for further threats. But the room appeared secure for now. He moved quickly to the main holographic control panel and inserted Cortana's data chip. Her avatar shimmered into view above the alien console. "I'm in." She quickly took over the facility's networked systems. "Okay, beginning shutdown sequence now. I should be able to initiate a cascading system failure across us." A shuddering boom resounded through the control room, cutting her off. The blast door buckled, then blew inward off its track under a hail of plasma fire. Elites rushed into the breach, weapons blazing. "We've got company, Cortana," Chief barked, opening up on the aliens and backpedaling for cover. "Whatever you're going to do, make it quick." He continued firing precise controlled bursts from his MA-5B, even as scorching return fire depleted his shields again. The elites were relentless, scrambling through the door over their own dead to reach the entrenched demon. "Just a few more seconds," Cortana called out, her voice strained. "Get ready, this will be close." Plasma bolts sizzled past John's head as he slammed a fresh ammo magazine home and downed another snarling elite. He had nothing left now. It was all up to Cortana. "I can't hold them off forever in here," he shouted. His halo disarmed Cortana. "Done," she replied. "Now hang on." Every light and system abruptly winked out, plunging the room into darkness. All John could hear over the ringing in his ears was the angry bellows of the remaining elites as Cortana's overload cascade rippled through Halo's networks. It was done. Together, they had beaten the odds and stopped this superweapon from firing. Humanity had earned a reprieve from total annihilation. But at grave cost, with the Covenant still out for blood. This was just one critical battle. The war for humankind's very survival was only just beginning. Chapter 13. Avery Jr. Johnson sat with his back against a boulder and lit a sweet-tasting cigar. It was the last one from the pack he'd been saving in his armor's belt pouch, but this seemed like an occasion that warranted it. Might not get many more chances to enjoy a smoke. In the distance, occasional plasma fire still winked across Halo's surface as pockets of Covenant diehards continued fighting. But without leadership or functioning command networks, they were devolving into disorganized holdouts. The crisis was past, the Halo superweapon permanently neutralized. It had been a close call. Closer than most people would ever know. That damn floating donut nearly wiped out every sentient being in the galaxy. But once again, humanity stared utter annihilation in the face and somehow came out swinging. Walking tin cans like those Spartans certainly helped. Johnson chuckled to himself around the cigar clenched in his teeth. He never put too much stock in religious mumbo-jumbo, but those green armored cyber soldiers had been the divine saviors of mankind today. The way that one had torn through an entire Covenant armada just to shut Halo down was something else. Heroes didn't get any bigger than the Master Chief. Johnson made a mental note to buy that faceless juggernaut a drink if they ever met again. For now, though, these strange new alien vistas had an allure to them. Peaceful almost, once you got past all the things trying to kill you. Johnson leaned back and exhaled a perfect smoke ring, contemplating the crazy turns his life kept taking. Maybe he'd just rest here a spell and soak it in. Johnson looked up at the gleaming megastructure arching overhead. Seen up close, the Covenant-built additions to Halo were impressively ugly. He preferred the ancient Forerunner architecture beneath. Strong, sweeping shapes that seemed to welcome you in. As the corporal began musing about where this rabbit hole might lead for humanity next, his earpiece crackled. Bravo 22, this is in amber-clad, a familiar voice issued from the radio. Captain Keyes hailing any personnel still planetside. Does anyone copy? Well. The Autumn's commander was still breathing after all. Johnson sat up and thumbed his comms transmit switch. This is Gunnery Sergeant Johnson. Me and some grunts are still kicking down here. He grinned around his cigar again. Ready for extraction or more fun either way? Acknowledged, Sergeant. Keyes replied, his voice statusy but coming through. Rendezvous at coordinates 97,561 for immediate evac. And Johnson, good work down there. I think we owe you and Master Chief a drink when this is over. Copy that, Captain. Johnson flicked the remains of the cigar away and hefted his rifle, already walking toward the distant Pelican extraction point. First round's on you. This roller coaster wasn't quite over yet. Might as well strap in for where it took them next. Up to the in amber clad, or wherever they had to go to take the fight back to the Covenant. When it came to humanity's refuses to give up, Johnson thought there just was no quit. And that was the kind of spirit that just might see them through this mess after all. The end.